right? Capacity is about the bandwidth. And bandwidth has these different layers mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. The bandwidth I had in my 20s or even in my early 30s or when I was healthier, literally 4 years ago before my health took a shift is very different than the bandwidth that I have now. And so I've had to be radically honest with myself about what I can and can do, and then also be very strategic and even creative, innovative about how I approach some of the solutions. So like that circles partnership where it was like, okay, I still need revenue stream coming in. It might not be the same amount of revenue that I might make up on my own, but how do I make sure that I get paid for the marketing that I also have to do, right? Finding those kind of creative solutions has helped. Also looking at, I'm very numbers driven now. One of the benefits that I had coming from startup, we practice what we call the lean strategy. So you had to get really creative, like how can you achieve your results with very little resources? And then to add to that not burning yourself out piece, right?
Welcome to Success Leaves Clues, the podcast where we interview business owners on how they built their businesses and the hard lessons they learned along the way. My name is David Swin, and I'm a business coach and the founder of Purple Circle, where we help business owners achieve their first 6-figure, 7-figure, and 8-figure year, all without sacrificing their quality of life. Before becoming a business coach and before founding Purple Circle, I started and scaled several 7- and 8-figure coaching businesses and have been a consultant at several businesses doing over $100 million each, including some that are publicly listed and doing over $1 billion each. In every episode of the podcast, you're going to learn lessons that took our guests years to learn, and you'll be able to learn that in minutes. No matter if you're a new business owner or an established business owner, every episode is going to give you the clues in order to elevate your business.
Welcome to Success Leaves Clues podcast. I'm Pedro, and today I'm joined by Yamarie Negron, who has identified a critical crisis that's costing organizations billions. Women leaders are leaving at record rates because burnout is embedded in the very leadership behaviors and workplace structures they're expected to navigate. What makes Yamarie's work urgent is her recognition that traditional retention strategies like wellness perks and DEI initiatives are failing because they don't address the unconscious leadership patterns that fuel this exodus. Yamarie specializes in trauma-informed leadership and workplace culture transformation, helping organizations stop exhausting their best talent through corporate training, consulting, and coaching that builds psychological safety. Her approach addresses the sobering reality that 41% of employees in psychologically unsafe workplaces plan to leave within a year, proving that when you create environments where women don't just lead but actually thrive, retention becomes natural. Okay. Welcome to the show, Yamarie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Great to have you. I'm a comic book nerd myself. I love the first edition, so let's rewind a bit back to the origin story because, like I always said, every coach has that moment where they look at their life and say, yeah, I guess this is what I'm doing now, right? So when was that for you, Yamarie?
Yeah. So I became a life coach. I feel like most life coaches do, even if they don't talk about it outwardly, because I was trying to fix my own life. All right. That's the reality here is I entered a season in my life where everything was falling apart and the things that I usually did in the past were not working. So even though I was trying really hard, even though I was learning all the things, even though I had 3 different coaches, a therapist, a shaman, I'm not exaggerating. I had all the things, the teams to try to support me through my process. My marriage was falling apart. I was exceeding my goals in my career, but I was experiencing a lot of workplace toxicity. And it felt like nothing I was doing was working. I was literally starting to wonder, like, am I cursed? And so this led me down the rabbit hole of really trying to understand, like, what is it? Like, I'm the common denominator in my life. So what is it that's perpetuating all these cycles? And as I started digging deeper, what I realized is that I had built a life based on someone else's blueprint, that I truly was disconnected for who I really am. Everything I had done in my life, achieving the grades, climbing the corporate ladder, even getting married was because of someone else's barometer of what success looked like, not because of what was truly authentic to me. And then this led me down this deep journey that brought me here today.
Okay. Well, first of all, I also had my time with a shaman. Okay. I'm not judging. I'm right there with you. Okay. So that's one thing. The other thing is like you brought up something very interesting, and which is following someone else's blueprint, like someone else's agenda, right? Of what success looks like. I feel like I felt that too. Like it's not, and sometimes our people that are so close to you, like your mom and dad, and you're like, yeah, I'm gonna replicate that, right? And eventually we find out that we need to follow our own path, right? Now, I'm curious about one thing, right? The shift. I always call it the shift. So when did it shift from I'm helping people in the coaching space, right? Because in the early days, we're like trying to help everyone, right? Sometimes we're helping, trying to make it work, and we ended up helping everyone and anyone. And from that shift from coaching and see if this works to I'm building a real business around this, you know? I'm not sure if it's the first paying client, it's the first invoice. When did that worked out for you? I mean, how did that look like?
Honestly, my journey happened pretty rapidly. So I was still in corporate America, but doing a version of coaching on the side. It looked very different back then. I was using different tools, but I was still in corporate and doing this on the side. And I was feeling that yearning of, I should just take the leap of faith and like really invest all of myself into this business. I'm going to be honest. It wasn't until, in spite of exceeding all of my metrics, the organization said, we no longer need you. We're going to eliminate your role. That was the catalyst moment for me for sure, the drive. I was like, okay, I have 4 months savings in my bank account and it's now or never. If I don't do it now, I never will. And I started telling people what I was going to do. And I was fortunate enough that one of the people that I told, like, hey, I want to start doing coaching. I'm still trying to wrap my head around what this is going to look like specifically, but here are some things that I feel I can help people with. They were like, do you want an event space? When do you want to have your first event? And the rest is history. I literally got my first 4 clients out of that event within a month of deciding that this was it. I was going to do it. There was no backup plan. And then from there, I mean, COVID happened shortly after. I started my business officially in September, and COVID, we were locked down in New York by January. So obviously I had to pivot, but it wasn't this like shift from, I think I've always been propelled by that. I want to help people. I will say as I've matured as a coach, the mindset has shifted from how that looks, right? Like helping people doesn't mean that I solve the problem for them. It means that I serve as the mirror that helps them see how they're already resourced and where they might need to make some adjustments to achieve what they want to achieve. The definition might have changed. But I think for me, that was like pretty much from the start. I was clear on why I wanted to do this, not just because I got laid off, but because I was tired of feeling like everything I had worked for and all the things I had checked off that were supposed to make me happy were sucking my soul.
Mm.
And I just followed those nudges along the way.
That's funny, right? Well, you were at the same time you were kind of building your own practice on the side, right? But how life sometimes pushes us towards something, right? It's like the layoff or whatever. You're like, and you were kind of ready. You kind of needed that, right? It sounds like. Now, after you got rolling, Yamari, who are the people that kept showing up? The ones you realize, okay, this is my tribe. I can serve these people best.
Yeah. What I realized is it was me at different stages of my life, right? And what I mean by that is the type of individuals that I tend to attract. I work mostly with women, but I like to call them the few brave men who are brave enough to like work with me as well. I do work with some men, but all of them have something in common. These are individuals that are high achievers. They're the go-getters. They're the driven ones. They're the warriors. They're the ones that are extremely resilient, have a lot of grit. They're not lacking in capability.
Mm.
What I started noticing about them that I noticed about myself along the way as I was going through this healing journey, what they were actually struggling with is capacity and a recognition of how their conditioning was still showing up in maladaptive ways. And so those are the individuals that I attract is they're very self-aware. They're very driven. They do all the things. They're like most people's ideal client. They're like, sign me up, coach. What do you want me to do? I will do it. But there's still a disconnection between what they actually need in the context of the season that they're in and why they're doing what they're doing.
Okay. That makes sense. Now, I'm curious about one thing we didn't brought up yet, which is your business name. Okay. So walk me through that. I want to know a little bit more about Namaste and Slay.
Yeah. Again, I don't know if my answer is going to disappoint you because this is a very interesting one. Namaste and Slay for me personally, it came up. Namaste and Slay started off as something completely different. I should probably give you a little bit of background on that. When I first started Namaste and Slay, it started off as an Instagram channel. where I was posting inspirational quotes. And if I'm being quite honest, it was a cathartic tool for me. It was a tool that I was using to try to re-empower myself because I was feeling very disempowered in my life. I was feeling very defeated, as I mentioned earlier. Like this was born out of not only struggle, but struggle and feeling like I'm doing all the things, but like I'm doing everything right. And why is it that nothing's working out for me? So if I'm being 100% honest, I'm not going to give you the BS story. I was sitting on a train and I was thinking like, what would be a cool name for this? And I was just kind of like meditating on it a bit on a subway ride back home because at the time I lived in New York City. And Namaste and Slay came up. I had no idea what Namaste even meant at the time. I just went with it. Namaste and Slay. And then what I think is very interesting about Namaste and Slay though, because now I understand what it means, that Namaste is all about, the God in me sees the God in you, or, the higher version of me sees a higher version of you. And Slay is really about what we do in my practice. We're all about slaying those inner demons, right? So helping you identify all the patterns that are sabotaging you, how your nervous system is getting in the way, and giving you the tools and the skills to experience not just like short-term results, but authentic transformation, literally becoming the version of you that can achieve that next level. So what's been very interesting about my journey is it kind of just came to me on a whim, if I'm just being 100% transparent, but it's so aligned with my mission that it's kind of just, again, interesting how those things happened. A lot of what I feel for me personally has been very serendipitous on this journey.
That's very interesting. That brings me back to one memory. I had a guest on the show, Radesh Manalescu, and I asked him about why did you become a coach, man? Like, I was in this workshop and they told us to write something on the paper, and I just wrote coaching, and the guys got no idea why. It just happened. So I think those stories are actually the most interesting ones. It's like a moment of breakthrough, of inspiration that you have no explanation. It's just simply happened. So I think that's a pretty cool story. So let's not underplay it. Like, it's pretty cool, right? Now,
Sorry, it's not more practical for you guys. I do have a marketing background. That's what I did in my previous life. I was a
mhm,
director of content marketing, focusing mostly on startups and tech companies. But, I did not use that in this event. It was
mm,
almost like a divine download in some kind of sense.
right. Now, I want to do a quick exercise if you don't mind. Okay.
Sure.
Let's pretend I'm your ideal client profile, I'm your ICP. Okay. But not me necessarily. I have a long distance cousin. It's called Pedro. Okay. She's a high achiever woman. She's great. Okay. I don't really have her. She doesn't exist, but let's pretend she does. Okay. So, first thing, how would Pedro eventually find you in the first place, marketing wise?
So are you asking specifically how I currently market?
Could be. I mean, she's your ICP. She's like, is it the website? Is it LinkedIn? Is it referrals? How would that find her way to you in the first place?
So I'm going to be true to how it's working now, because you've caught me in a very interesting transition season where I'm expanding and that requires different marketing efforts. But I will say from the very beginning, how I approached this was thinking about a few things. What are the problems that I can solve and that I solve, right? Because remember back then I wasn't even a coach yet. So what are the problems that I can solve and I solve? And then where can I find the audience? And so for me, very early on, because I knew that with 4 months of savings in my bank account, I had to figure out how to bring clients in real fast. I played to my strengths and I played to that strategy, which at the time was I went on Eventbrite. I was like, what are the problems that people are searching for via Eventbrite? Because I understood that at that time, Eventbrite, Google prioritized it in the rankings. So I started looking for things like at that point in time, it's different now, but at that point in time, it was things like self-empowerment workshops. Now it's a
Hmm.
lot more specific to the questions that people are asking, especially with the shifts in AI, right? So that strategy is shifting for me
Hmm.
in terms of like the specific tactics, but it's always been the same. It's been, what are the problems that I solve and where is this person at? Because I'm going to be honest, the thing that I don't love to do, some people love doing the marketing. And I know that that was my previous life. I don't. I want to be able to just show up, be in my zone of genius, support clients through rapid transformations. I don't want to have to do all the marketing. So how that's played out for me throughout the years, it shifted from first being Eventbrite to then being Instagram Lives. When that platform started evolving for me, then I was like, you know what? I need a way to bring in revenue, but I know that for me, what works best is like show up, be in your brilliance, be in your magic, and people will just raise their hands and say they want to work for you. That's always how work with you. That's always how it's worked for me is I just got to show up, be in my authentic truth, share my knowledge, share my stories, share my framework strategies, and people go, where do I sign up? And so how that eventually evolved for me was I started looking, I was like, you know what? There must be companies that have actual containers that might pay me for this. And so I started collaborating with a company called Circles, and I kind of see it as my paid workshops every single week. I show up do 6 sessions. Well, now it's going to boil down to 5. I do 5 facilitation groups with them every single week. Not only do I get paid for my time, but it also becomes an organic container where I'm able to attract leads. And through that, as well as word of mouth referrals, my business has done pretty well over the last 7 years. Now, as the landscape evolves, so do you. And so as I've reached maximum capacity with clients and have been navigating that challenge with one-on-one clients over the last 2 years, my strategy is now going to change. So how I plan on doing that is working to the strengths of what's currently out there now. So I've been learning more about YouTube funnel strategies and more passive income strategies so that I not only can expand my capacity and my reach, but also be able to find clients where they are. And we know that I think like 80% of people are now using AI as a search engine tool versus,
Mm-hmm.
the traditional Google and all these other paths as well. So that'll be
Yes.
evolving for me as the landscape evolves.
Okay, interesting. Now, let's pretend Pedro, she watched one of your Instagram lives, referral, or even one of those workshops at Circles, right? That you're facilitating. Let's pretend she liked what she watched. Okay, she resonated with what you put out there. It's just like, you know what? I want to work with Yamarie. Okay. So what happens is that let's speed up the sales process. Let's say there is alignment, okay, and you guys are going to work together, and she picked main offer, however that looks like. Okay, you may have different offers. So I really want to know is like walk me through the process of her being onboarded, how that looks like to work with you, and the potential outcomes
Yeah.
she expect out of it, please.
Yeah, absolutely. Currently, I still do discovery calls to this day. So usually if someone wants to work with me, they have to, and I wouldn't even say usually everyone who works with me has to go through some kind of discovery call process. And a part of that, if I'm being honest, you and I talked about this even before when you were interviewing me as a possibility for this call. One of the things that I cannot get back is my time and energy. And I am very protective of my time and energy. And so I'm interviewing potential clients just as much as they're interviewing me. There are
Mm-hmm.
clients that might not be a good fit for me because the work that I do is kind of in this unique soft spot. It's not therapy and it's not traditional coaching, but we're looking at how your past is showing up in the present. Sometimes the people that want to work with me really need therapy or need some other container that's not going to be the best fit. Or perhaps they don't have the mindset yet that is required to be coachable. So in the discovery call process, not only am I asking questions to understand whether or not coaching is the right container for them, I'm also trying to understand, am I the right coach for the person on the other side of this screen?
Right.
And once we establish that, I always ask for permission in the start, and I think that's just like a typical coach strategy. I make clear at the start of the conversation what the intention of the call is, if we're a good fit, what I'm going to offer as options. And once I offer them those options, then we decide what the next best step is. And then from there, then I set them up in my calendar, and we always work with a minimum of a 3-month container. This is as much for me as it is for them. You probably know now, having interviewed so many coaches, maybe perhaps even being a coach yourself, that you cannot get results in less than 3 months for the most
Mm-hmm.
part. Yes, you can
Yeah.
have, even with my rapid transformation strategies and frameworks, you can have breakthroughs in a session, but actual consistent transformation is going to take time. So I require a 3-month minimum container, but they do have the option to continue working with me as long as they see fit. And usually what happens with me and clients is they come to me for one specific problem, but as they start to realize, oh, this is a bigger pattern in my life, there's different levels, we start to move on to other layers, other levels
Mm.
of their lives so they can continue to expand on the transformation that they experienced.
Got it. Appreciate the insights. And want to play devil's advocate for a second here, if you don't mind. Okay. And you
Yes,
kind of
of
browse
course.
through the topic, which is capacity, right? So here's the thing, right? I see a lot of coaches out there. They're very passion driven. They really love what they do, but at the same time, they're coming sometimes from corporate background. And there was a well-oiled machine in the background working, right? And now they see themselves being the marketer, the salesperson, business development, and the coach. Let's not forget about that,
Mhm.
right? So, wearing a lot of hats, I'll put it like that. So, my question to you is, how do you think about capacity so you don't stretch yourself too thin and burn yourself out?
So first, let's define capacity, right? Capacity is about the bandwidth, and bandwidth has these different layers: mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. The bandwidth I had in my 20s or even in my early 30s, or when I was healthier, literally 4 years ago before my health took a shift, is very different than the bandwidth that I have now. And so I've had to be radically honest with myself about what I can and can do, and then also be very strategic and even creative, innovative about how I approach some of the solutions. So like that circles partnership, where it was like, okay, I still need revenue stream coming in. It might not be the same amount of revenue that I might make up on my own, but how do I make sure that I get paid for the marketing that I also have to do, right? Finding those kind of creative solutions has helped. Also looking at, I'm very numbers driven. Now, one of the benefits that I had coming from startup, we practice what we call the lean strategy. So you had to get really creative, like how can you achieve your results with very little resources? And then to add to that, that not burning yourself out piece, right? Now, the not burning yourself out, I didn't quite learn that in corporate. I think I learned that more when I started working on my own. But how that helped me was becoming very numbers driven. So I mentioned earlier that my strategy has evolved as the landscape has evolved, as my target audience behavior has evolved as well. Most of my clients are using GPT as an extra coach and therapist at this point, right? So as my client has evolved and the landscape has evolved, I've looked at those trends and I also looked at the metrics. For example, Instagram used to bring in 15% of my leads at one point. That was one of my top lead generators outside of referrals and outside of events. When that no longer was happening because the landscape changed and I didn't have the time to invest or the resources to invest into the marketing properly, my strategy had to adapt. And I went from, okay, I'm not going to do this, to that more circles oriented strategy that I talked about, or referral based strategy that I talked about. And so I think it's very important to have a pulse on what is it that's driving your results in your business, or even looking at, a lot of coaches don't know their success rate from conversation to conversion, right? Those are things that I took that from the startup world because I was on an acquisition driven team, and I've looked at those things from the start. And I think it's really helped me in those seasons where I was like, man, I have to pivot. What's going to be the best lever to pull so that I'm not stretching my capacity? So when I'm looking at capacity, I always look at what is my bandwidth first. I'm honest with myself. And then I look at, in spite of that, not in spite, but within that bandwidth, because I feel like in spite can imply ignore it. If I accepted that that's my bandwidth, if I accepted that those are the tools, the resources, the emotional, mental, physical capacity that I have, what am I willing and able to do different? And the last thing that I want to share, just because I think it contradicts a lot of the business advice you hear out there, but might be helpful to your audience. That creativity piece is really important. I had to get creative about how I structured my packages. So one thing that I noticed as I started partnering with other organizations is, well, now that changes the quality of my lead pool as well, doesn't it? And
Right.
and the makeup of that pool as well. And so one of the things that I did to adjust for that is, instead of recognizing that there's a certain benchmark I need to hit monthly to sustain and have capacity, or I'm not going to be able to show up for my clients. There's also a specific need that my client has around, I was starting to see trends around what they were able and willing to invest as well. And I was like, well, how can I match that investment without sacrificing myself? And I started getting pretty clever about how I structure the packages. So all of my clients get 2 sessions a month. All of my clients get a certain amount of Voxer support from me. All of my clients get session recordings with transcripts so they can go back and review them again. But the amount of time they get with me changes depending on their needs. So that way I'm able to offer containers that meet their needs while also meeting my own. So I think it's really important to look at this at all different angles, but having that mindset of accepting and acknowledging your capacity first, and then looking at what are all the potential solutions from there has been very important for me.
Interesting. I love how data driven you are. I think that's the marketer, right? At the end of the day. Now, I have a question for you. I mean, I talk with a lot of life coaches and have them on the show too. And sometimes what they tell me, or the feeling I have, maybe that's on me, is like the positioning, marketing wise, is very abstract sometimes, right? It's like a better version of yourself, or whatever that looks like in your positioning too. I'm just overall talking about life coaches, right? And sometimes I feel it like the ICP is like, what does that even mean to me? So marketing wise, positioning, we're talking about positioning. How do you grab a concept that is so abstract, right? Sometimes, and have it landing properly in your ICP. You know what I mean? Did that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll be honest that I'm still evolving and refining that. But what I've done throughout from the very beginning is I've talked to the ICP, right? So when you talk to them and you listen to them, and I do have the benefit that some coaches are afraid of having their sessions recorded for obvious reasons. I get why that makes sense. But I also have the benefit that now, 7 years in, I have hundreds of hours of recordings of people telling me in their own words what their challenges are, what their problems are, where they're getting stuck. And I'm using that information to inform how I refine my positioning, how I market my solutions to them. I'm using their own language, their own words, so that when I'm marketing myself, they can recognize themselves in my programs.
Okay, that makes sense. Gonna throw one out there if it sounds helpful for everyone who's listening. Like I was a high ticket sales closer, right? And one question that really helped us build content was at the end of the call, whenever we have someone closing, was like, why was it a yes for you? Right. So they will unpack the reasons. Oh, it was this piece of marketing. It was this. So you can, hit the gas on whatever they told you worked, right? Because that's your ICP telling you, like you said, what
Mhm.
is not working, but also what is working, right? So there's that. Now, shifting gears for a second, Yamari. Okay, I want to talk about future. So where are you taking all this? Looking ahead. And you kind of mentioned a little bit already. Where do you see the business going? Are you thinking about scaling, hiring, or is there a next step you're excited about?
Yes, scaling and then hiring, right? For me specifically, again, that lean business model that I talked about a little bit earlier, I've embraced that from the start just to make the business more sustainable. So right now, as I mentioned, I am focusing on scaling. There's only so many people that I can help one-on-one. Right now, I have 30 clients and that's a lot, right? That is me. But again, because I've come up with those creative ways, I can do that, but this is
Mm,
the most I can do. I've literally just yesterday, I was turning someone away and that breaks my heart every time I have to do that.
mm,
So what I've been working on over the last few months is the relaunch. I had a group program at one point, the relaunch of my group program based on a lot of the things that we're talking about, looking at what have I learned from my ICP over the last few months, the challenges they're experiencing, what they still feel is missing, looking at ways that I can better support them to refine what that course curriculum is going to look at. I just finished a final pass of that last night. And over the next few months, my goal is to go back into the group coaching so that we can scale more. There's also some passive income products that I've been designing as well for people who are at different parts of the funnel. Because as I mentioned earlier, not everyone is going to be ready for the coaching that I do. And that's okay. That doesn't mean that I can't help them. I still do
right.
have that servant leadership soul, right? That wants to help. But I also have that recognition that I can help, just maybe not in the ways that I used to self-abandon and sacrifice before to help for those specific individuals in the audience, and where I'm really still trying to focus and refine. If I'm being honest, and I'm still looking for support with, I'm trying to understand how to do this at scale in the corporate environment. Because yes,
Mm,
I help these women leaders in these organizations and everything that you said at the beginning of the call, but right now it's been on an individual level.
mm,
Those women are coming to me with the challenges and I'm helping them, but it's disconnected from the organization itself. And while yes, it's improving their results in the organization, it's even helping them climb the ladder in the organization. It's helping them do all these things. I'm still refining what does this look like and what does it get to look like in a team setting? So those are
mm.
the next phase approaches for me is again, expanding this work into group and then from group figuring out what is this going to look like in a team setting.
Interesting. That is always a crossroad, like a fork for the coach, right?
Uh-huh.
Is it that one to one to many because they reach a cap, like they reach a limit, like you're already
Uh-huh.
facing it. And at the end of the day, it is about impacting more people in the one to many, but it's also stop trading dollars, for time. I know one to one
Uh-huh.
container, but I feel like it's like it's part of it is letting go, right? It's like because what made you successful until this point is the one on one, and now you're trying
Oh
something
yeah.
new. And I see a lot of coaches that they compare, like, oh, the one on one is better than the one to many because that it's just, in my opinion, just different dynamic. We're talking about community. We're talking about something that sometimes have a life of its own, right? We have seen. I joined communities, and I've seen, and actually was contracted by other coaches and they were like, wow, coaches were visiting themselves, right? To see how did that look like business wise and different things. So I think a lot of this, other coaches, not talking about you specifically, obviously, it's like sometimes they're like, what does that look like? I'm going to lose some part of me, and coming from a place of fear instead of a place of excitement. It's something just different, something new. I'm not sure about your take on the one-on-one menu. How do you navigate it? What do you think about this?
I agree. I don't think that there's one specific. I think the coaching industry does have a little bit of a bad rap for that, don't they? That this solution is the best solution. This path is
Mm,
the best path. This method is the best. This container. It's like, no, it's going to be unique to the individual and where they are on their healing journey.
mm,
Sometimes hybrid containers are just like, I will say for my client, often because they tend to be hyper independent, one-on-one is a great first touch point. But eventually what also caps them is that they're not open to receiving support from community. And so there's a community piece there as well that they need. Right. And so I think different containers for different purposes and different needs to fulfill different needs. And as you were just hearing with my strategy, I don't look at it that way. I always go back to what's my mission, and my mission
mm,
as at its core, it's going to sound like really cheesy and altruistic, but my true why is I want to end unnecessary suffering. Like a lot of the suffering and the struggle that I created for myself and that I see my clients create for themselves, it's all that conditioning. It's all that programming that they're confusing for personality. But I'm the kind of what you're talking about right now, but I'm the go-getter, but I'm the hyper achiever, but no, I'm the independent one, or I'm just a people pleaser. These are survival patterns that you learn. These are not who you are. And I think we ourselves can get caught up. I mean, we know this, right? Our personal problems become business problems as coaches if we're not able to recognize them and address them. And so for me, it's about how my goal is to help individuals end unnecessary suffering. Then what are the ways that I can do that? I can do that through a PDF. I can do that through a course. I can do that in a facilitation container. I can do that one-on-one, right? Those are just the mediums. They're the vehicles. There is no
mm-hmm.
one size fits all solution.
Right. That makes so sense. I mean, I had people like coaches telling me like my one-on-ones, they just want the one-on-ones and they no show in the group sections, like in the hybrid model. And I had people telling me, oh, they just show up for the group setting and they don't want to talk to me on a one-on-one container. So that's the thing. I think it's about the demographic at the end of the day, the ICP and the community you built. Right? Because at the end of the day, you attract a certain type of people. If you're more introverted and you have your way on the one-on-ones, and that's your demographic, the one-on-ones will take off and you're going to have a hard time in the group setting. But there's another thing that I feel like I need to ask you because it's, I feel I feel it's very interesting, like this topic, which is there were times that I was trying to, I would say, reach out to people that are already paying clients, right? Even in my own practice. And it felt like code outreach, like I'm trying to help you do the work that you already paid. And sometimes they no show, sometimes they, it's kind of weird impression. Of course, there's several layers to that, but sometimes I feel like there are people out there, they want to romanticize the fact that they are doing something to sleep better, but in reality, they don't want to put in the work. So how to navigate that, and if you ever felt something like,
Well, that's where I think my style of coaching becomes attractive to my client. I think being very clear about what the roles are from the beginning is important. I think that's part of why I also like the discovery calls. The discovery call is setting the foundation, not only gaining clarity on what is it that the client needs, but also setting the expectation for what this is going to be. I am not here to solve your problems for you. I can be your guide on this journey. And I can, if you want shortcuts, I can give you those shortcuts, right? But
mm,
at the end of the day, the client is doing the hard work. And I think there's also perhaps a confusion. The coaching industry is very unregulated. So we also have to look at what coaching is. That's what coaching is meant to be, right? Like, let's think of it like any other coaching industry, right? Like football, for example.
mhm,
The football coach isn't on the field playing football and like running reps with the
mhm,
football player, right? And it's the same thing with the coach. I think sometimes there's a lack of recognition with the coach himself on what is your role here, right?
mm,
I'm very clear on what my role is and in my specific niche and in my specific category. My role is to be the mirror. My role is to be the bumpers even, but my role is not to do that work. And I'm very honest with my clients. My coaching style, I'm very honest with my clients throughout the coaching process. And I'm also very accepting of free will. I remind them throughout the process, you don't have to do anything you don't want. Let's also be honest about what you want. Are you showing up in aligned and incongruent with your goals? If not, let's look at it through the lens of capacity and ability. And what are you able and willing to do with the capacity that you have to get closer to that goal? Because we have to remember why they're in that coaching setting to begin with, like, especially for the kind of work that I do. I'm clear. If they could do this on their own, they would. They're coming to me. They're supposed to get stuck. That's why I'm here. They're going to get stuck. They're going to experience resistance. And I also don't see resistance as a character flaw. I look at resistance literally through that nervous system lens. Is if my client is experiencing resistance, is because there's a literal part of them that's saying, it's not safe for me to do this. I'm going to lose something I really want, love if I do this, right? They do not feel safe enough to take the next step. So rather than, oh, they're just a bad client or getting on it, I look at it through that nervous system lens to help them even recognize that so they can make those decisions and restore their agency.
Right. That makes sense. I love that. Appreciate that. And Yamarie, if someone listening wants to connect with you or follow your work, and we're going to have all the links in the description, but what's the best way to find you and connect with you?
Yeah, I would say the best way right now as I'm going through this evolution is my website, which is my first name, last name.com, yamarieNegron.com. And for the time being, Instagram, since that'll be evolving soon. But I feel like those are the channels where I'm still the most responsive.
Okay. There were a few things you shared today that really stayed with me. Okay. I would say first in the origin story when you're like, I was fixing my own life and how vulnerable you are and so open about your own learning journey, right? It's like I'm still learning about positioning. I'm still learning about how to do, the scaling, the X, Y, and Z. You're so open to it. I really like your authenticity. You're not
Thank you.
trying to push someone who you're not, pretend to be someone your Yamarie is not really is, so I really like that. I would say also to highlight the thing when you mentioned someone else's blueprint, right? Sometimes we're playing that, we're looking at our neighbor, we're looking at our parents, or like, yeah, we just want to replicate what they have. But in reality, we're comparing our inner side to their outside, right? So it doesn't really work like that because we're different. At the end of the day, we're different people, right? That's simple. Now, also, I really like when we were talking about you onboarding someone like Pedro, my long distance cousin, that you were like, there are clients that might not be a good fit. Sorry, Pedro, I'm not sure if you're a good fit, but I love the alignment piece, right? You're not coming from a place of scarcity, I would put it like that, because in sales, that is very common. People are so outcome driven that they forget they're here to serve first. And whenever you're here to serve, it needs to just make sense, right? That person needs what you offer, or else this is not going to be a good thing for both parties. And at the end of the day, that's very, very important. And you're coming from an abundancy mindset, which I commend you in doing that. Of
Can I
course.
add to that? I know that
Yeah.
we're wrapping up here, but I want to stress the importance of that piece because it can cost you. This is from learning things the hard way, right? It wasn't that I was, yes, abundance mindset, but abundance mindset can be really hard when you're like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills next month. And I've certainly have been there
Exactly.
too, even though I was making really good money because we talked about this before is I kind of like decided I was going to do this business on a whim. I didn't really have a strategy beyond that. So I've experienced some of those hurdles, right? I've learned the hard way that trying to take on that client and ignoring your better judgment can cost you, right? And cost you in different ways. I've taken on the client that I was like, I don't know here. I'm picking up like borderline narcissism vibes. And I don't know if I should take this client on and did it anyways. And it came back to bite me. And so I just want to stress that, especially if you have anyone who's maybe newer, like just going into this journey and is like, well, I just need to figure out, be willing. First of all, your reputation. That's one thing from the start that I've always considered. I'm like, I will lose the paycheck so that I don't lose my reputation because my reputation is everything in this industry. So I've always considered making decisions from there, but also in those moments when you're like, well, yeah, I know I can help them, but there's a part of you that's like, not really picking up coachable mindset. Please don't ignore yourself because for me, what it led to, I just want to be transparent and honest. It led to almost being in a situation where there was a potential lawsuit. And now thankfully I dot my I's, I cross my T's. I had all the records, all the receipts, as we like to say, to prove that this person was flat out lying about me. But like it can cost you your business to try to bring on the wrong client just because you want to make profitability or you want to make sure that you make you're able to pay those bills this month. So really consider the cost of not signing on the right client. I just wanted to throw that out there before you continue.
No, of course. Great addition. And I would love to add on that, which is basically whenever you're unsure about if you have someone like that already, in your calendar, just look at it at the calendar. And when you're like, I have this person today, that's that's when you know you shouldn't be talking with them, because it's
Yeah.
super nuanced. It's not that easy. Sometimes it's something that's not sitting right with you. Something is off
Yeah.
here. You know, eventually something will not work out. It's even hard to explain, right? Sometimes it's, I don't know. It's like they're challenging me and stuff like, what are you going to do for me? And sometimes you're picking up on an uncoachable mindset. You know, basically it's it, but it's hard to explain. I'll put it like that. Now,
Mhm.
this is my long-winded way of saying that I appreciate what you do, Yamarie, and I do appreciate you being
Thank
here and
you.
sharing so openly today. It was great having you.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me as well.
That's it for this episode. This episode, as well as this podcast, was brought to you by Purple Circle, where we help business owners elevate their business to 6, 7, and 8-figure years, all without burning out. If you're looking to grow your business, as well as get the time freedom that you are looking for, visit us at joinpurplecircle.com and see what we can do to help you and your business.